Hello and welcome to this read aloud of lines 1914 to 2199 of Maria Headley's translation of Beowulf. Beowulf has returned home, and this is a segment of the poem that I think would be in a class if you were racing through this poem. This retells a lot of the stories that we already have heard a version of from the poet himself. So this would be easy to skim, and because we're in the hands of a great book, do the opposite. Go more deliberately. Line 1914 on. Their harbor watcher was already running, waiting as he had been for days, eyes peeled for the return of his tribe. He tugged anchor cables, moored the ship to sand, heaving her against the current to keep the waves from seducing her again. He ordered that the holds be emptied, gold and gems, all stores and hoards straight to shore. After that, it was only a hop skip to Hijlac, Hrethel's heir, and the gold would go his way, up the cliff to King and company. The building was brilliant, the king imposing. Enthroned in his home hall, his queen was young but shrewd. Though she'd only overwintered recently in the realm, Herath's daughter knew her duty. Open heart met open hands when it came to Geats. She paid attention, made trenchant thrift feel more generous than Lesser's overgifts. Nothing like Modrith. Oh shit, remember her? The people's princess, an utter criminal. Bro, if anyone ever looked at her in daylight, save her own overlord, she'd deal that man death, order him bound, each shackle tightened to torture, his sentence resounding from on high. Sword selection, then the entertainment, a public flaying, arteries spurting, gore. Good riddance. She may have been beautiful, she may have been royal, but can we agree here? Why the brutality? Pretty peace weavers aren't meant to claw, bringing good men down just for looking. Innocent oglers sent deathward. Talk about inflated offenses, right? Then Hemming's son became Modrith's husband, and she shifted mysteriously. Drinkers spilt a different song, a bathroom wall graffiti shrift. Marriage mellowed the monster. She sea changed when she was Opha's wife. Everyone liked her better. Her father had traded her, hauled her onto a ship, dowry gowned, conveyed her from her homeland to other shores. Her nature changed when she got free of her family. She became queenly. Before, she'd been the worst. She sat on her new throne, famed for kindness, loyalty, devotion to her king. And him? Bro, obviously he was the best. A king among kings. And moreover, the greatest man who ever lived, if that's not overkill. So it's no wonder she learned morals under his hand, Offa's honored wife, as he ruled over his lands. From that duo, as proof, if needed, came a good son, Eomer, grandson of Garmund, Hemming's kinsman, well met to all warriors, reliable in combat, and a keeper of comrades. Back to Beowulf, a hero himself, marching with his men across the sand, crossing the sprawling strand, the tidal flats and salted shores, making haste beneath brightness as the sky candle shone hard from the south. They hurried blur fast over land to where, rumor had it, their youthful king, killer of Ongentheow, protector of his own clans, was handing out booty in his honored hall. that Beowulf was back, was shouted man to man. So Hygelac knew it, even as his warrior made his way through the gates and into the hall, war kin to the king and killer captain, well and willing. The hall was cleared, and the king awaiting, as our boy and his horde marched in. Hygelac greeted his warrior in formal speech, then sat down head to head with him, ready to compare notes with his returning boatman brother. Hareth's daughter wafted wifely through the hall, mead jug held in her hands, caring for the companions, pouring a waterfall into cups as warriors held them high. Only then did Hygelac begin to question his comrade calmly, commandingly, to glean the story of the Wargeats and take the tale for his own hall history. Holy hell, Beowulf, how did you get out there? How did it go out there? You left with hardly a word and hide yourself over water to defend a hall not your home. Heorot. And Hrothgar? Did you help him? We know his woes, and to be honest, I thought them insoluble. I've been warning you in advance, dreading news of your death. As you may recall, I begged you to let the Danes do their own damn dirty work. It's them who began a blood feud with Grendel, and them who should end it. Well, thank God you're home, whatever horror happened at Heorot. Beowulf, descendant of Ecgtheow, began. I'm surprised you haven't heard what went down, Hygelac. It was proud, already written into poems. Grendel and I slammed each other in the very hall he'd been harrowing, murdering metal shieldings, ripping hearts from their holds, all of which, not to jump ahead, he got whipped into eternity for. Grendel will never have a single son to brag on his daddy's battles, to tell the tale of our night fight, no matter whether any of his awful line managed to live through a shifting civilization. Let me lay it out now. When I got to Denmark, I sped to Hrothgar's hall and presented myself, giving cred and clan. Once he knew who I was and what I'd come to do, he stationed me on a bench between his own sons and threw a raucous feast for me. I've never seen any company drunker or more delighted. More mead, men. The queen herself came through, that pretty peace pleader, and gave out gifts to bolster courage. A war torque for this warrior before she snuggled up beside the king. Hrothgar's daughter, too, made the rounds, bringing beer to the highest rank, all plank arranged. Freawaru, they called. And she circled the room, offering up a studded cup. That bangle-bedecked beauty is betrothed to Froda's bereaved son, Ingeld. The Schilding's king chose him for her husband, Hrothgar, hoping, kingdom keeper that he is, that sending his precious daughter to fuck his foe's son will fix the fatherly feud, heal bitter hearts, and bandage weeping wounds. But spears seldom sleep for long when a ruler's fallen, no matter how perfect the princess. We can predict how the Heathobards will react, every loyal thane there. All will go well until after the wedding, when the young lord stands to dance and dips his Danish bride, her body dripping in a dark dowry, ancient garnets bought in blood from the Heathobards themselves, sparkling stones stripped from beloved ghosts, ringmail wrought by their own ancestors, cherished heirlooms returning home as Danish dazzle, uncredited. An aged uncle, already drunk, swaying, will shout, Let's have a toast. His eyes will focus on rings well known to him, triggering black thoughts of massacre, all that killing, all those spirits suddenly filling the hall, heart pounding. He'll sound the sorrows of his people, begin to prick the prince's conscience, seeking to stir him. To our host, and to the sword his father carried in his final battle. Don't tell me you don't recognize the prime iron he died swinging that day he fought the Danes. Let me refresh your memory, boy. The day Withergild was murdered, and our heroes fell to folly. The day the Scyldings shook the field down, scavenging our dead. Now, who wears your father's armor? Some assassin's son? Walking into our home hall, shaking sword and status, boasting that he owns us, weighted with the wonders you should yourself be wearing. He won't stop, but will keep pressing, raising the temperature of the room until one of the Danish ladies' thanes is slain, streaked with crimson, killed for Danish deeds. His slayer sprinting out alive into home territory. This will begin it all. Again, both sides, vow bound, will break. Old thirsts unslaked, a rage rising in Ingeld, his love for Freyerwu unfrozen, comforts gone to curses. It's all just to say, sidebar, that the Heathobards aren't to be trusted. Their faltering friendship with the Danes, bridged only by a bride. Now, my main man, let me get back to Grendel, the story of our clash and crash, everything that happened when we two went hand to hand. After heaven's gem slipped smoothly down to soil, he arrived. That froth-fanged foulness, that twilight tormentor, come to attack us as we gathered in silent safety in Heorot. There, Hanchel was fated to fall, torn from his life, first cursed on this quest. Our beloved brother was beaten and eaten. His gory grave, Grendel's gullet. Let me be clear. Grendel ate him up. The attacker's teeth were bloody, his face strewn with gobbets, his body swollen with evil, and still he wasn't finished feasting, but insisted on leaving the golden hall with more harvest. Grendel was famous for his heft. He extended hands then for none other than your boy. He had a huge sack hanging from his shoulder, stitched with sinew, clasped with clever workings, crafted of twisted dragon skins. Grendel knew nothing of us, but this wrath wanderer wanted to stuff Beowulf and his boys into that sack, abduct us. That shit wasn't happening. The moment I stood to face him, my rage evident, Grendel was a goner. I'll be talking too long if I got into every detail of the battle, how I paid in pain for wrongs done to Danes, how I paid him in pain for wrongs done to Danes. Suffice it to say, I won your honor, my king, and the Geats as well. Even though Grendel got loose and lived, suckling at survival's sweetness a little longer, his right arm stayed in Heorot, holding the door, amputated, and he limped, anguished, to the mere, where he dove and drowned in despair. The Dane Lord rewarded me for my life risking with piles of gold and heaps of heirlooms once the sun was up. All of us at table, primed for entertainment, singers and story slingers. An ancient Scylding, steeped in the history of his people, told tales of the early days. Sometimes one of the men touched harp strings, recounting his life story. And other times the king himself offered up an awesome riff, while in turn the grimmest among us, scarred and wizened, would hobble up to tell of boyhood battles, then shift to songs of old age, overcome by emotion, a silvered heart aching for the good old golden days. We reveled indoors for hours, joyful and united, until nightfall came stalking us, a shadowy reaper. Uninvited she appeared, a dame made for damage. Grendel's mother, slinking out of dark, formatted for fury, avenging her son and bringing ruin back to the room. Grief and death theft had possessed her, and she came to find the Geats who'd found her Grendel. She marched for blood, a rebel warrior entering private premises, and captured a counselor, Asheri, the king's closest and wisest. In the morning there was no body to burn, no corpse, nothing at all to call back his memory in smoke, no limbs to light for love. She'd borne his flesh away and hidden it in the darkness under the mountain and rushing waters, her mere morgue. Hrothgar was broken by this blow, worse than any other, his scars reopened by razors. The king begged me, yes, begged, and he named you, too, to go after her, to pursue her underwater to avenge his loss, and if I did it, to gain even greater glory. He named the price, and it was done. Into icy waters I went, diving deep to meet my match, and found her raging. I took her, and she took me, too, hand to hand, woman to man, water roaring red, splitting the current with color, until at last, in her own hall, I beheaded Grendel's mother with a sword too substantial for anyone else's swing. I barely left with my life, and only that by fate's choice. But when I returned to the surface, Halfdane's heir, bearer of men, Hrothgar, gave me a stocked store of his own hoard, gifts golden and godly. Thus Hrothgar acted as ever he has, paying me for my sacrifice and more, letting me set my wages in goblets and goods. From Hrothgar's heirlooms come Hygelac inheritance. I've brought these gifts to you, your majesty, and I give them willingly. You're the man I seek to impress. I've got no other family left. None close. Your kindness is my comfort. Beowulf called for the boar's head standard, the battle-crested helmet, the grizzled gray mail shirt, and the ferocious war sword, and wrought an account of their provenance. When Hrothgar gave me all these precious things, brilliant leader, he bade me bring you words as well, to explain why their favors fit for kings. He told me that this had belonged to his older brother, King Hrothgar, but he'd kept it locked away, never giving it over to inheritance, not even to his son Heorwerd, despite his worthiness, despite his loyalty. Now it's yours to bear in health. Bro, here's what I know. 4 horses were brought in next, presented to the king. Beowulf bestowed those bays along with their armor, each one an impossible gift of blood and girth. This is how it should be between birth kin. No plots, no plans for plunder, no conspirers crafting catastrophe, no one sculpting death where life should be. The warrior king, Beowulf's uncle, was lucky to have the loyalty of his nephew, and he carried Beowulf's burdens in return. I heard Beowulf brought hinged the golden torque gifted him by Wealhtheow, and with it 3 horses harnessed similarly in gold, sleek and graceful. The queen wore her reins well, her breast radiant with heroic history. Thus did Beowulf bring his bravery to bear. He'd battled like a brawler, but could hold court with kings and queens too, never punching down, never mocking drunk comrades, never locking himself in combat with those whose strength couldn't stand. He kept his stones controlled, and when he rolled only with equals. Mind, he hadn't had the status when he left. Boy, who men looked on as low. The Geats thought him lazy, and even their lord had never given him span on the beer bench, believing he was all bluster, no badass, thinking his position came from privilege, not class. But now, everyone who'd thought Beowulf was just a wayward boy got taught. The king, warbringer, protector of men, ordered Hrethel's heirloom brought in, and that splendid sword, gem-clotted, the best by far in the treasury. He lay in Beowulf's lap. Then more. He gave his man 7,000 hides of land and a hall of his own into which he could place his throne. They both already had land from their father's ancestral sway, but now a better way. Land came from Hygelac to his new right hand, Beowulf.